and the Tripartite Committee on Minimum Wage will reconvene on the 23rd of May to negotiate a new minimum wage after organized labor walked out on May 15. Committee Chairman Bukka Goni, in a letter, said members are willing to revise the initial 48,000 naira proposal. The letter also urged labor leaders to engage their members and attend the upcoming meeting. The Nigeria Labour Congress and the Trade Union Congress are demanding a 615,000 naira minimum wage, significantly higher than the government's offer. The organized private sector proposed 54,000 naira following the breakdown in talks. NLC President Joe Ajaero insisted on 615,000 naira, citing the economic needs of an average Nigerian family. He blamed the government and private sector for the stalled negotiations. Now, to discuss this, we are joined by a public affairs analyst, Francis Chilaka. Good afternoon, Francis. Good to have you here.
Good afternoon, and how are you today?
I'm very fine. Thank you for asking. Now, Francis, the Tripartite Committee seems willing to revise their initial offer. Now, by how much do you think the government is likely to budge in these renewed negotiations, considering the significant gap between their proposal and Labour's demand?
Well, to start with, I think whoever is leading the team, Labour, they have not taken into consideration the current hardship in the land, the cost of living that is going up on a daily basis. Because when you look at what has been offered to us asking for, you begin to ask yourself, I mean, the people who are championing this negotiation, are they not Nigerians? Do they not understand that the cost of living has skyrocketed? And do they not understand that if you follow the figures today, it means that 48,000 going by the dollar exchange translates to $32 per month, which translates to $1.6 daily. For 20 working days, it's about, 2,400 per day. And you ask yourself, how do you feed? How do you clothe? How do you pay your transportation? How do you fuel your vehicle? How do you pay your children's school fees? And how do you put a roof over your head? So they are not being sincere, they are not being proactive, they are not being honest with their negotiations. I believe that the most reasonable amount Nigerians should earn today to be able to survive the current economic reality, I should be looking at about 250,000 as a minimum wage.
So the labor unions are demanding 615,000 naira, while government offered 48,000 naira. What are the possible economic implications for Nigerians, even if you just touched on that? Now, if either these extremes were implemented, what would it be? If we go to 615,000 naira as minimum wage, would that help Nigerians be more, well, would it increase or improve the standard of living as against 48,000 naira? What would that also imply?
Well, I don't support the demand of labor asking for 615,000 naira. It is outrageous. I would say that. I think labor has not been reasonable. They've not been sincere. But then, if for any reason people are paid 615,000, it means we are going to have what we call hyperinflation. Because as you increase the salaries, don't forget that every other thing goes up with it. But I think it is reasonable for government to begin to look at certain parameters. You need to look at how much is rent going for, how much is school fees going for, how much is petrol going for. So when you take all this into consideration, it gives you an idea of what I think would be more reasonable. Like I said, I believe that 250,000 as a minimum wage for a Nigerian will make more sense. It will cushion inflation to a large extent. It will also ensure that people have enough purchasing power with them.
So what do you think about the private sector's proposal of 54,000 naira? Is that reasonable in your view?
Well, you know that the private sector will take cue from the federal government. They are looking at it. If the federal government goes up to 250,000 per month, I know that the private sector will be looking at about 300 and something thousand. So what the private sector is doing is that they're taking a cue from government, and you won't blame them. Everybody's feeling the pinch, so they would not go above what government has recommended because the cost of running business in Nigeria today in terms of multiple taxation is not also good for businesses. So the business, private sector, they're looking at what government is offering and they're taking a cue from that. 54,000 from the private sector, it also doesn't make sense because everybody now goes to the market. We know that we go to the same market. We know the cost of living is going up. So I think that the private sector should do better than they're doing, and they should be able to, forget what government is offering and fix their own rates based on what is practicable and doable.
So if the government continues, or rather accedes to labor, and they say, okay, fine, even if it sounds ridiculous, 615,000 naira, what would be the implication for the economy? Are we looking at perhaps maybe higher inflation?
Well, if we got at 615,000, I can assure you that we're going into hyperinflation. Things are going to get very, very expensive. Things are going to get really, really tougher for Nigerians. But you see, this whole thing boils down to the fact that I think Labour is looking at it and they're asking themselves, how much are your senators earning? How much are your honorable members earning? How much is the governors earning? How much are your political appointees earning? So these are the parameters that Labour is using to try to say, okay, if we all go to the same market and you're earning 1 million naira per month, how do you want somebody who is earning 30,000 naira per month to survive? It's still the same market. So for me, it's not more of the salary increase. It's more of creating an enabling environment for businesses to survive and for businesses to thrive and create employment. So government needs to do more than just talking about salaries. Government needs to also cut its own cost in terms of governance. There's so much waste in governance. Government needs to cut it to be able to ameliorate the current realities that we're faced with today.
So we all know the modus operandi for the NLC or TUC is always to resort to strike and then at the end to compromise somehow. Now, in this case, if a compromise was to be the answer now, what kind of compromise could that be? For example, could we see a situation where certain things are subsidized and workers are asked to perhaps maybe receive the minimum wage that is suggested by the government while we have other things subsidized? It could be anything.
Well, when people talk about subsidy in this country, I keep asking myself, what are we really subsidizing? First and foremost, we're not subsidizing petrol. We're not subsidizing electricity. We just woke up and we hear that DSTV has increased their prices. So prices are going up. If Labour right now needs to back down, I think Labour should not be looking at subsidy. Subsidy will not work because if you look at subsidy, how many people will benefit from that same subsidy? I think that the thing is, there are two things there. Labour should be looking at an increase to about between 150 and 250. And then maybe after this, we'll probably talk about price control. It is very, very essential and necessary that government should begin to look at price control. But in looking at price control, government must create their own market that serves as an alternative. Because if you're looking at controlling price when you have no alternative, it will also not work. So these are issues that needs to be discussed, deliberated, and a decision taken upon it.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chilaka, for joining us. We appreciate that you've taken time out to give us your insight on this issue.
Thank you. You're welcome.